5 centuries before the end of the Second World War, the West had been expanding. Its missionaries, its pilgrims, its soldiers, its explorers pouring out from its shores to cross oceans, settle new continents, build vast empires extending out across the globe. But in 1945, for the first time since the age of Columbus, it was contracting. Europe was in ruins. Half of it lived behind an iron curtain, and the rest looked like it would soon follow. The great Western empires had entered into terminal decline, accelerated by godless communist revolutions and by anti-colonial uprisings that would transform the world and drape the red hammer and sickle across vast swaths of the map in the years to come. Under President Trump, the United States of America will once again take on the task of renewal and restoration, driven by a vision of a future as proud, as sovereign, and as vital as our civilization's past. And while we are prepared, if necessary, to do this alone, it is our preference and it is our hope to do this together with you, our friends here in Europe. We are part of one civilization, Western civilization. We are bound to one another by the deepest bonds that nations could share, forged by centuries of shared history, Christian faith, culture, heritage, language, ancestry, and the sacrifices our forefathers made together.
Okay, what you just heard now is a reality. It's not something that, because at first, that's why I haven't even posted it, because I think I got it 2 days ago, I think. Because I'm like, this can be, because the problem now that we're experiencing is also because of AI. You don't really know what's real and what's not real. But I have to confirm, I check different channels, different news, like broadcast and so on. And I realized what you just heard now is actually real. Because the reason I almost thought it wasn't real is because in just an indirect message, I would even call it, is it even indirect? Because I think it's kind of direct, even though he thought maybe that was hidden under the way he phrased it. The US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, stood in Munich, in Germany, obviously, to talk about recolonizing Africa. That's really what's going on. Like, when you listen to that, there is no way you would not think that they are actually regretting the decolonization that has been happening over the many years now, in order for us, and to be quite honest, let me be honest. I know that slavery is not directly happening, but I feel like it's still happening, to be quite honest. So listening to that speech and realizing that no African leader has stood against that or spoke against it. What is wrong with African leaders? The only African leader that actually spoke out about it is actually the South African president, who is always actually, like, South Africa is one of those countries, no matter how much you want to say, oh no, this and this, they are always standing up against the bullies, honestly speaking. They are the only one that took that country that we don't want to mention to the high court, obviously, like, yeah. Let me not even, because I don't want my videos to be flagged and so on. But they took them, to court about what's going on in Gaza, right? That's South Africa.
President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has called for African nations to unite and stand its ground to prevent being exploited for its rock, soil and dust. This after U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio praised imperialism. South African president, speaking on the sidelines of the African Union Leaders Summit that concluded on Sunday, said Africa needs to respond to the rapid geopolitical changes with one voice. Speaking to the Africa Report, he said, and I quote, "What we should be avoiding is a new form of colonialism where those economies will now begin to target the minerals that they have. It is now time for Africa to do business on its own terms and to make sure the decisions that we engage in at the G20 on how we treat our endowments, particularly critical minerals, should be dealt with. There should no longer be a case where rock, soil and dust are exploited out of Africa." Ramaphosa's remark comes after U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in a speech at the Munich Security Conference last week, advocated for a renewed partnership between the U.S. and Europe to revive the West's age of dominance. Rubio urged allies to disregard guilt over historical colonialism, framing Western expansion as a noble civilizational achievement, which critics interpreted as a call for a new era of neocolonialism. Rubio said U.S. and Trump would like to work together with what it considered to be its Western allies to stem the decline and what a loss of dominance once again.
So why are you shocked? I see leaders of the EFF and everybody responding to Donald Trump. I don't have time for nonsense. I expected this. And more backlash is going to come. If South Africans are not ready to expropriate the land because they are scared of sanctions, they are scared of backlash, and Donald Trump will come for us, and Britain will come for us, and the EU will come for us. I said, and I said this throughout my life in the movement, that for everything good comes the pain before. If you're not prepared, South Africa, to take the pain, then forget about the land. Donald Trump has not said anything extreme. Things are still going to come. They know the consequences. We know the consequences. We know that the first response will be killing. They will kill us for that. So we know that death is the first price we are prepared to pay. The second price we are prepared to pay for this land is poverty. They will close taps. But if there is a conviction, and not sloganeering and public opinions, then we must be prepared for everything. It's a war. We must be prepared for Donald Trump and all of them. But if there is a conviction, and not sloganeering and public opinions, then we must be prepared for everything. It's a war. We must be prepared for Donald Trump and all of them. We're not scared of them.
But we have 54 African countries, right? But only one spoke out? Like, are you not listening? And I'm not even going to count the Sahel, because the Sahel has no business with that kind of nonsense, right? So the Sahel has taken themselves out. So I would say like the 50 countries. Now, like I say, I have two brothers, one from Ghana and one from Nigeria. I usually use their analysis as a learning point, because the reason I chose them specifically, I have a lot of other channels that I watch, but I don't want to share too much information about this and this and this and so on. The reason I chose them is because they are very honest to the core. Like, one is from Nigeria, one is from Ghana, but they will not hesitate to be or go against their own country if those countries are against the Sahel. Obviously, right now, I think by now everybody should know that any country that goes against the Sahel is an enemy, because right now the Sahel is fighting for African freedom. I have to say that. It's funny that in 2026, we are still talking about freedom, because you know what? The kind of freedom that we have been enjoying actually have been fake. That's not freedom. If somebody else have to decide in regards to your health, what you have to do, like, that's crazy. That's not freedom. The Sahel are the only 2-3 countries right now. Well, I'm counting Botswana and Namibia as well. We have good leaders there, to be quite honest. I wouldn't throw them away. But the Sahel is fighting literally for just like the whole African continent to be free, because we are not free. Let me put this to, I think they are very good. They have the knowledge of geopolitics, which obviously the American citizens, most of them, really, they are short of that. Because I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's the free schools? Because most American has no clue about geopolitics, to be quite honest. They have no clue. Because the way they respond to things is almost like they have no clue about what their leaders do in other countries. Anyway.
The United States of America is now openly calling for the recolonization of Africa. I know that sounds a little bit, it sounds extreme. I know some of you will say I am overstretching it. But ladies and gentlemen, I am not making this up. This is not a speculation. This is not even my own opinion. This is coming directly from the official State Department record. They are no longer hiding it, folks. They are now openly calling for the recolonization of Africa. Let me show you exactly what happened. Yesterday, February 14, 2026, the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, stood before European leaders at the Munich Security Conference held in Germany. This is one of the most prestigious security gatherings in the world. The biggest powers sit in that room. And this is what Marco Rubio, U.S. Secretary of State, told them. He lamented openly lamented the gradual decline of Western colonialism over the last 60 to 80 years, especially since the end of World War II, when decolonization really took off. He described how, and I am quoting him directly here, for 5 centuries before the end of the Second World War, the West had been expanding its missionaries, its pilgrims, its soldiers, its explorers, pouring out from its shores to cross oceans, settle in new continents, and build vast empires extending out across the globe. Did you hear that? 5 centuries of Western expansion. Missionaries, you can doubt it, but Christian missionaries back in the day, they were all part of the colonial project. It's not just missionaries, soldiers, explorers. These people are crossing oceans, building empires. And this guy, Marco Rubio, is actually celebrating this colonialism. He's actually romanticizing 500 years of Western conquest, and he's doing it in year 2026 at an official diplomatic event on the record.
And this is why we do not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it. For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline.
This is a speech that, after this speech, in any serious continent, or on any serious continent, African leaders need to call emergency meeting and condemn it. But all of them are quiet. African Union, they need to call a meeting immediately and take a step against it. All of their interests on the continent need to be threatened immediately. Africa need to start speaking with one voice against this. Let me break down what this speech is actually saying. The speech of Marco Rubio is glorifying Western expansion and empire. When you look at it, Rubio begins by celebrating the 500 years of Western expansion, missionaries, soldiers, explorers, empire. He framed colonial conquest as a civilizational achievement. Now, in the speech, violence, slavery, land theft, and cultural destruction are erased in the speech. So, this is kind of like historical whitewashing, not a neutral history. He went on by painting decolonization as a disaster. Can you imagine that? Marco Rubio described the post-1945 decolonization as terminal decline. A terminal decline caused by communism, caused by anti-colonial uprising. So in translation, it simply means that African and Asian resistance to colonial rule is portrayed as a mistake. Freedom movement are framed as destructive, not liberating. He is implying that colonial rule is better than independence. He made a statement also. He said the decline is a choice, and the West choose empire again. According to Marco Rubio, Western leaders refused decline and did it again. This is the most dangerous part of the speech. What this did it again means in modern language, when you bring it down, is talking about military dominance, economic control, political interference, cultural and ideological enforcement. This is neocolonialism openly defended, and African leaders are quiet.